there's just so much, to share about it, because if we don't know the deeper history about what happened in 1952 with this unconditional surrender agreement, this is not surrender to Germany, that happened at the end of the war. This is the Nazis, which broke away from the Germans, that are connected to the Dracos and the ICCs, the Interplanetary Corporate Conglomerate, which basically has infiltrated every pillar of society. So all these pillars of society are swamps that need to be drained. History, the school systems, and even religions that have turned into cults that have really dark underbellies. Rings, the underground operations that are, taking place. There are active military units and forces that are, taking it down, but it's up to us to dismantle the programming so we're not turning a blind eye. And that's how you rid the planet of a parasitic government, is by not consenting anymore. So it's a multi-level war. And I've learned a lot about what Eisenhower set up to counteract.
Laura Eisenhower with us. Thank you for coming back.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Nikki.
How do you interpret the significance of the recent new moon in Pisces? And what do you think about the alignment of the 7 planets that occurred a couple days ago?
Yeah, well, we had this powerful new moon in Pisces conjunct a lot of planets. Well, I wouldn't say like in tight conjunction, but just a big grouping of planets in Pisces. So on the new moon, it was the sun, the moon, Saturn, Mercury, Neptune, and Saturn, Mercury, Neptune, sun and moon. Yeah. But there's also, when they're talking about the alignment that's very rare of the 7 planets, they were talking also about Uranus and Jupiter. So Jupiter is in Gemini, Uranus is in Taurus, and somehow like they all align, not in conjunction. The conjunctions, though, surround the North Node. Now that the new moon has passed, we still have this intensification of energy on the North Node in Pisces. And the North Node represents the growth period of humanity. Like, what do we need to look at for ourselves as a humanity, individually, as a collective? And what's interesting is Neptune actually rules the collective conscious. It rules the unseen realms, the multidimensional, the creative imagination, the mystical. It's really just the fullness of what we can access in our creative imagination. So when we draw upon these higher dimensions and we speak them or anchor them into action, taking action, we manifest. And this is the whole notion of manifesting our dreams or anchoring heaven on earth, because the North Node Pisces is opposite the South Node Virgo. And that's what the nodal axis is. The South Node, North Node, directly opposite each other. It's the ecliptic path that the eclipses activate, which is always like a profound time for humans in what it activates. And it really represents the soul trajectory. So when you look at the transits, it represents this integration of Virgo, Pisces. Virgo is ruled by Mercury, and it's an earth sign. It rules our physiology, our physical health, our physical body, our routines, our habits, how we feel about the work we do in the world. It also connects us with nature and animals. So if we're reflecting upon that, we're really tuning into what our body is trying to tell us. And in this time of our history, we are in this time of awakening, right? This ascension window period. But there's been a lot of assault on our physical vessel. But it comes through hitting that Neptune, which is the unseen realms, where programmings and lower astral entities and manipulations that are unseen have influenced how we feel in our physical body. Bioweapons, geoengineering, the chemicals that they put in foods, the indoctrination programs, every kind of programming under the sun has kept us in a lower level experience of Neptune and a lower level experience of our physiology, because our DNA isn't completely switched on. So with all these planets surrounding the North Node, it's showing us that for us to heal our body, we have to tap into something way beyond. We have to begin to reach beyond the limitations and infections of our creative imagination, which means that we have to really purify ourselves from all the different programmings and all the um, belief systems that have harmed our physical body. The frequency modulations and the bioweapons, it's all based in frequency. Once it's entered the body, though, it becomes very toxic, right? But how can we undo that? And this is what epigenetics is all about, where Mercury, which speaks to the body, determines which parts of our genetic code are going to be activated. But if it's running under a programming, if it's attached to a programming, the body will be more assimilated into AI, or it'll get really, really sick. And this is where we need to notice with Uranus connecting to the North Node and also Pluto, how to begin to dismantle that. And this is a time of deprogramming. This is a time of purification. This is a time of transformation. So that's the growth period of humanity. Can you step into that Neptune without being captured into the web of delusion, illusion? And this is where AI comes in. We see online even videos of animals and news stories that are totally AI generated. It's really hard to determine what is real and what is false and what is fake, right? So it's really important we fall back on ourselves and we ask ourselves, can we tap into the creative imagination, into the unseen realms of what hasn't manifested yet, and align with it to produce a different reality versus being encased in this external AI and looking outside of ourselves to see what is real. Because we're getting so much distortion right now that it's hard to know what is real. And for us to be able to navigate this world right now, we have to get real with ourselves and live our truth, access those higher dimensions, and then we will be able to navigate and know and see and connect into the synchronicities that support the dreams and visions that we want to create and manifest, that come from our deeper soul calling and the downloads we get from our higher self, which is very targeted in the school systems with indoctrination. So, yeah, it's a time of really owning your creative power and knowing how powerful you are and not letting anything hook into you anymore.
Very nice, Laura. Now, how can humanity avoid being manipulated and controlled by unseen dark forces in order to continue our ascensions?
Well, that's very interesting. And that's a really good point because right now Mars is square Chiron. Mars has to do with our ego identity, our willpower, our warrior energy, and our just ability to be self-driven. When it's square Chiron, it's squaring wounds and injuries and trauma. So this is a really, really incredible time because a lot of triggers are coming up to the surface, which means that we can look at those wounds instead of internalize them and just like find a way to make them go away through addiction or distraction. And that's where the entities come in when we're unconscious, when we're distracted, when we're just grabbing any addiction. We don't realize that like entity attachments and parasitic forces are totally feeding on it. And usually it's unresolved wounds and traumas. So we want to embrace the fact that Mars is square Chiron, bringing up a lot of that to the surface. And Mars happens to be in Cancer right now, squaring Chiron and Aries. So, where did you feel wounded maybe as a child in your family? The Chiron wounds are everything from what society has thrown at us with labels that we adopt that are not really representative of our authentic self. The gender confusion agenda that is being called out. The wounds of our identity is also coming to terms with the deception of being convinced to do something that you later realize wasn't the best idea. All these injuries to self and identity, where you thought you knew something and then you don't know it anymore, you have an identity crisis. Or if you are an awakened being, all the censorship and all the targeting. So everybody has their different version of experiencing this Chiron wound with Mars ego identity. Now, archons and parasites and entities breed on and are drawn to unresolved wounds and traumas. It's sort of like if we have a wound and a cut and we don't put calendula oil or just whatever and put a Band-Aid on it and protect it from its environment, a lot of germs can get in there and infect it. So if we have wounds, whether it's emotional, physical, mental, spiritual, pretty much all the above, and they're unresolved, it's like an open wound that these forces are just going to feed on and create an infection. And that infection then all of a sudden brings us into the AI. Like we're no longer able to function without uh, like major technology taking over and assimilating us. And that's the whole idea, is that we don't address our wounds. We take the pharmaceuticals. We look outside of ourselves for answers. And I think this is such a critical time for humans, because now you can feel into those triggers, feel into the North Node and all this powerful Neptune energy, and be like, wait a second, I'm inspired to trust my intuition and my higher self and envision something greater. Tap into uh, medicine that is plant medicine that shamans understand. They understand the multidimensional and how it relates to nature, and these are major catalytic times right now for getting to the root. And in doing that, we purify. And when we begin to, deprogram and deal with our wounds, how can a parasitic or entity attachment hang on anymore? And that's the ultimate way to, cleanse, the injury and wound on whatever level. So humanity has been controlled by, Anunnaki, and then I see Nazi Draco Alliance for thousands and thousands of years. We have amnesia. We're born without remembering our galactic history. We have so much ancient trauma that we're not addressing, that it's no different than, having an entity attachment. The planet had an entity attachment on its children, on the humanity that we, have been enslaved by these, parasitic forces. So the micro and macro is so connected. If we do this for ourselves, and everybody takes it upon themselves to really work on this within themselves, we'll begin to live in a world that is not able to enslave us anymore. Targets and indoctrinates and all these different methods and tactics to dumb us down as well and deeply. So it's all connected. And it's very interesting to see the astrology currently.
Given your Eisenhower family's history and your own commitment to the well being of humanity, what are your thoughts on Trump's presidency and the directions he's taken the country? Do you believe that President Eisenhower's vision for a better world aligns with the current leadership of Trump?
Well, a bit of a showdown of forces. The deep state isn't gone. I mean, we see this with the LA fires, South Carolina now. Directed energy weapons are still being used. The skies are still being sprayed. I mean, there's so many layers to all of this. I do feel this administration is taking us in a better direction. Robert Kennedy Jr. calling out, we're seeing, changes with fluoride being removed from the water. I mean, that you can't get a sex change if you're a child without your parents' consent, or maybe not at all. I'm not quite sure where it stands, but I mean, the changes have been coming, and it's very encouraging to see that. But then you see things that are confusing about the Ukraine or a possible mRNA, which isn't being talked about right now. But I mean, we have to understand that in 1952, there was an unconditional surrender agreement under Truman, and every president since has been not owned by the deep state, but under its influence. And you either battle that influence, you succumb to it, or you are owned and groomed and engineered by it. And they have many individuals that are representatives of, their darker agenda, which I believe Trump is not. Eisenhower wasn't either. So I feel a vibrational match in a lot of ways with Eisenhower's administration and Trump's. I had never voted before until Trump came along. Everything changed as far as how I felt with the frequency. It was different than the Republicans and Democrats of the Bushes, the Clintons, and Obama, and everybody that came before. Reagan is different, but Kennedy too. But and Carter. I mean, the thing is, there's a lot that president does, the position of presidency, that has nothing to do with what they want to do. There's a political party called the deep state and shadow government that exists beneath it that are really pulling the strings, or like holding the greater power, that if you were to stand up against it, you could possibly be assassinated, right? So we see that. It's not easy for Donald Trump to just go in there and take down the deep state. He's already targeted. He's been targeted. They know that that's what he's there for. So I feel that there's a lot covering up a much, much deeper war, a much deeper layer of what's really, really going on. There's always a constant strategy to distract us away from what we should be looking at. So a lot of the things that are happening on the world stage that are creating a lot of conquer and divide about what he's doing or not doing is almost irrelevant, because he's dismantling something that goes so deep that we're not going to get all the information about where we are currently with all of that. But I'm going to be finding out more, and I'll be talking about it more as I continue to talk to the senior advisor to the Earth Alliance about what is going on. He did say Trump is heading the White Hats. But similar to my great grandfather, we see where, their hands might be tied, or where there's those individuals that will act like they're on your side and on the side of your administration and what those visions are, but they're actually not. I mean, it's not an easy position for him to be in, but I really feel we're on a good trajectory, though. There's just so much, to share about it, because if we don't know the deeper history about what happened in 1952 with this unconditional surrender agreement, this is not surrender to Germany, that happened at the end of the war. This is the Nazis, which broke away from the Germans, that are connected to the Dracos and the ICCs, the Interplanetary Corporate Conglomerate, which basically has infiltrated every pillar of society. So all these pillars of society are swamps that need to be drained. History, the school systems, and even religions that have turned into cults that have really dark underbellies. Rings, the underground operations that are, taking place. There are active military units and forces that are, taking it down, but it's up to us to dismantle the programming so we're not turning a blind eye. And that's how you rid the planet of a parasitic government, is by not consenting anymore. So it's a multi-level war. And I've learned a lot about what Eisenhower set up to counteract the unconditional surrender agreement under Truman. And this outer barrier was put in place in 2014. That would have been the year that a fake alien invasion would have happened, where we would have been sold off in mass numbers to further enslavement, with a surface population of 10% just being left to repopulate and keep up this same life cycle. It's almost like a life cycle once your planetary system is invaded. And the beauty of this planet is this invasion is not going to succeed. And the right administration is in place to make sure of that. Even if you don't like what you're seeing, even if it causes a lot of division, we have to understand that there's certain layers that we're not able to see. And it's not just let go and trust and be complacent either. What can you do? What are you noticing in your communities? What are you feeling within your own being that you need to answer to instead of suppress?
Hey, guys.
Okay. I can only be
Sorry,
on for 10
I'm
more
late.
minutes. Oh, it's okay. I can only be on for 10 more minutes. So, but it's cool. Like I've said all that I need to say. So go for it.
Well, we waiting for you. We were talking about President Trump and President Eisenhower in the deep state.
Well, that was the unconditional surrender agreement, and Eisenhower stepped into office in 1953. But we're talking about Trump's administration and how this is very different than the other presidents that have been in place. The parasitic relationship between governments and humanity, and then doing the inner work. What are the planets doing? The new moon and all the lineup of planets in Pisces and the North Node. And yeah, and when you were frozen, I really got into my piece about what I think of the administration and what we don't see that's actually happening, that a lot of people speculate about. But obviously, this trajectory is way better than anything else that was an option. And I see that we're seeing the dismantling of deep state with all the swamps that need to be drained in the pillars of society where they've been infiltrated. The medical industry, the school systems, everything across the board that has been infected.
Oh my God, this is such
Happy Mardi Gras, you guys.
Hey,
Oh, that's right.
That's right.
That's why I'm late. We were just in Snowmass California or Colorado with my dad and older brother. And yeah, you know how it goes at Mardi Gras. But I'll just show you a picture. We were out having a good time in front of band here. My
Oh,
dad. Oops, what was I saying?
you have a lot of people there. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Ah, that's awesome.
Oh, they look good.
Yeah, and I know your dad's not doing so good, Laura. So we gotta enjoy the time with him that we have.
Totally. Yep.
Yeah. And like your great grandfather, I mean, wow, what an amazing guy. And I'm sure you're saying from the book and what we have, the new information from Dan Cooper, that he was really put in a very tough position. And this is it. This is really important with UFO disclosure because this is the dawning of our government interceding and knowing about the UFO ET reality. And it kind of started with Truman, who made the surrender to the Antarctica Nazis who were flying over the Capitol building in 1952. And then Eisenhower had to accept the terms of surrender to these Antarctica Nazis. And I'm working on my next book right now called The Secrets of Antarctica. And this is a really important piece of history that hardly anybody knows about, that these Antarctica Nazis had taken all their Honeyboo and Vril and Andromeda cigar-shaped craft down to Antarctica and South America, and this is where the Fourth Reich was set up. So it must have just burned up your great-grandfather after having been the supreme commander of the Allied forces in World War II to then be told, oh, well, now we're going to surrender to this Fourth Reich group because they have this superior technology. Then all the while during Eisenhower's administration, he's going on those secret meetings and they know that they have to play catch up. They know they have to get some of this technology themselves through backward engineering and finding downed craft and so forth. And this is the whole point of Area 51. And Eisenhower did not have access to it. And he says, I'm going to send in the First Army and capture Area 51 in Nevada if you don't let me in. I mean, so this is how deep this whole thing goes, way back at the dawn of the UFO era. And so now playing fast forward, Laura, I mean, we're kind of getting to the point where we should have been during the Eisenhower administration, and that is making disclosure for this incredible technology and the presence of ETs on this planet the whole time along.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Just having to counteract it too by setting up the Earth Alliance and appealing to the Guardians with the help of Val 4. Yeah, this is all coming to light finally. And the most important thing is that we, the people, understand that we're the most important technology, really on a biological level, winning the war through not allowing the mind control and the psyops and the false flags and all the different mechanisms used to, you know, hook us into artificial timelines, where all this, you know, needs to stop. And I was talking to Dan Cooper today, and he was talking about the outer barrier being put around the planet in 2014, which was the same year they planned the fake alien invasion.
Oh.
And yeah, and when we hear about the possibility of it happening, this is almost just going back to the blue beam technology, knowing that they have it, thinking, is that the next card they're going to pull out of their bag? But they can't. They can't, not with this outer barrier. Most of the tactics that they're using are not about the original intent, which was to enslave us or remove 90% of us and hand us over to the Draco, is what he's saying. It's a lot different now. I think we're seeing it all come to the surface with the Diddy list, the Epstein list, and negotiations where the particular individuals that are being held accountable to protect their reputation, there'll be some sort of news story about them that won't reveal the depth of maybe what they were involved with, because they might have been blackmailed, or, you know, there's something going on about this process of bringing things to justice that we're just not seeing, is, I guess, my point. So yeah, this disclosure of these greater technologies, like you're saying, and I can't wait to see what you're going to share in your next book. These are really, important pieces. What do you feel about disclosure now? Like,
well, even the Diddy list and the Epstein client list, this is disclosure that this whole pedo empire honeypot operation has been going on right under our noses for many years, many decades. It said that over 90% of our Congress is that they have dirt on them, and you really don't rise to power unless they have control over you. And the way they control you is to get you in some kind of compromising position. The easiest way is with some kind of underage, and then they got you, and you will vote the way they want you to vote, and you'll go along with it, and you'll cover up for things they don't want known. So disclosure is really about uncovering this whole deep state apparatus and all the things they've held from us, including the UFO reality. So this is just one big part of it. But Laura, you mentioned Dan Cooper said that they put the screen around the Earth. That's like the quarantine of the planet, right? Where no ships can come in and out.
It's buffering us somehow. It's not like the quarantine prison planet that we've already been in with the net or the reversal grid technologies, but more a buffer to keep any more from coming in and leaving them no option but to be exposed because they can't leave, right? So the fake alien invasion, those technologies I think are already here, but they were able to buffer something. I think it has to do with the satellite technology and just something that would have been a major manipulation, because a lot of craft would have landed. I asked him, like, what would that have looked like? A lot of craft landing and just taking people away. So there's the terraforming and the takeover on the Earth level, but there's what took place in 1929. He was saying that's when the abductions began. It wasn't even for technology trade. It was for it was some agreement with the Galactic Federation of Worlds for them to begin to colonize Mars, Moon, Saturn, and all these other places. To really get involved, which then morphed it into the interplanetary corporate conglomerate. But all their plans have failed because of this outer barrier. And thank you for asking, because I'm going to really get into that explanation of what that is.
I know you have a meeting. Thank you for coming to my channel. Please come back anytime.
I appreciate it. Well, thanks so much. Good to see you.
Yeah,
Good to see you, Brad.
Too, Laura.
Bye.